Hey everybody, it's your old pal Andy. I'm just here to tell you there's going to be a really exciting event on our Twitch stream, the Lucky Paper Twitch stream, on August 23rd and 24th. I'm going to be at Cube for a Cause in New York, and for the first time for this event, we will be doing some live streamed coverage. So we'll be streaming each day from the morning until late dinner time-ish, 2 drafts a day. Tune in to check out some really cool cubes, and it's going to be me, friend of the show Patrick in the booth, friend of the show Ollie in the booth, and also Jesse Robkin. It promises to be a really fun, chill time. So check out twitch.tv/LuckyPaperMTG. Link will be in the show notes, and I believe there will be a video after the fact if you can't make the live event on August 23rd and 24th. That is the Saturday and Sunday after this episode is released. Hugs and kisses. Love you. It takes a lot to make a cube, a pinch of lands and creatures too, a scoop of burn to add the spice, a dash of spells to make it nice. And you've got too many cooks, 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 too many cooks. Takes a lot to make a cube. Flexible cards act as glue, and gold cards can be signposts too. Too many cooks, it's true. The saying goes, you should bolt the bird. At least that is what I have heard. This intro commits to the bid, so skip ahead if you don't want to sit through. Too many cooks. A playgroup is like a soup. Everyone adds an extra scoop. Welcome new folks by default, and you know Steve will bring the salt. And you've got too many cooks, 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 too many cooks. Takes a lot to make a cube, especially when players are new. These new cards have so many words, too many words, it's true. They say that math is for blockers. Steve lost, now he's slinging slurs. I'm telling the truth about this intro lane, so only listen if you have the strain. It's seriously long. Too many cooks. 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 Too many cooks.
All right, I'm into it.
Great. In that case, allow me to welcome you to another episode of Lucky Paper Radio. I'm Andy, and it's the Middle Ages, and I'm so starving and hungry. I haven't eaten a proper meal in weeks, and I'm going to go to the center of the town square and try and get everybody to help us make a soup together. I'm bringing Phyrexian Dreadnought. Anthony, what are you bringing to the soup?
I'm bringing some fresh abrade.
No, perfect Phyrexian Dreadnought. This is not fusion cooking. This is a disaster already. And brother D.S.B, what are you bringing to the soup?
A Triland.
Which ones though? Like just the regular ETB tap ones, right? Like a Seaside Citadel.
No, I'm probably gonna reject it out so it comes in untapped.
You're gonna bring a Triland that you Sharpie, and then we're gonna play by the Sharpie
Comes in
rules.
untapped.
Yeah.
What is this? Where did you find this crazy vegetable?
We got a guest on this week's episode of Lucky Paper Radio. We are joined by the one, the only D.S.B, known for. I mean, honestly, I think you're mostly in like the broader Cube community known as the guy that drew all those tokens at CubeCon that one time everyone was obsessed with. That's like a thing that follows you around. But you're a Cube designer of great renown, and welcome to the show.
It is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here today.
It was a pleasure and honor to have you. And we're here to talk about Stone Soup, which is a way to play Magic that you absolutely did not invent, and we refuse to give you any credit for, so stop trying to take it.
Thank you. That's very generous. Yeah, no, I did not. Absolutely not.
This is a way of playing Magic that you have popularized, at least in your Idaho playgroup. You've made a little video about it. Did you at least coin the name Stone Soup? Is that something you'll take credit for? Where did that name come from?
I think I may have thought of the name, yes. But I also got the name wrong because the Stone Soup that I know is not the Stone Soup that other people know.
Wait, other people know this already?
People know the parable.
Well, the parable, but they don't know the format.
Sure.
Wait, what's the parable? Because I think I know a parable.
Okay, what's your parable?
I was actually just reading the Wikipedia page about this before, because I like to read Wikipedia pages before about a subject just to make sure we're not doing something accidentally like ultra racist, because you never know. You might get milkshake duck.
You can get tricked.
Turns out that the Stone Soup parable, the overall parable, in case you don't know, is that it's like a bunch of people are starving and nobody's got enough food, and so somebody that's like a charismatic leader comes along and says, we're going to make soup from nowhere, and we're going to start with this stone. Some inedible object is like the thing that starts it off, and then everybody brings something to contribute to make the stone palatable. And so, somebody's got a little scrap of bread or, half an onion, and by the collaborative effort of the town coming together, everyone thought they individually didn't have enough food, and it turns out they did. And obviously the stone doesn't actually do anything. It's not edible. It's just there to get people to kind of pull together. But I think the idea is that you're going to like magically make the stone edible by adding more stuff to it, is the basic parable. But I read this really compelling sentence, D.S.B, which I'll read to you now, which is that in varying traditions, the stone has been replaced with other common inedible objects, and therefore the parable is also known as axe soup, button soup, nail soup, bolt soup, and wood soup.
I love a good bolt soup.
So it can be anything. Anything you can't eat, you just throw it in a pot and you got a soup going.
It's funny that there's a whole soup of inedible soups going here. It's like, well, we started with stone soup, and then somebody else brought axe soup, and somebody else brought bolt soup. And
that's a great
guess
way.
What? We still have nothing. We have an axe. And
That's such a great way this could go wrong. Is that you start a stone soup, and everyone's like, okay, great, I'll bring a different inedible thing, and they all just put inedible things in, and you've got a big pile of stuff you can't eat in the middle of your pot.
So, what did you think the parable was, Dan?
I thought it was just like, one day there was a big pot in the middle of town and everybody was starving, and they were like, oh no, let's go see what's in the pot. And lo and behold, there was nothing in there but a stone. And somebody was like, well, I have a carrot, I'll throw that in. And then someone else, well, I have a single yam. And it just so on and so forth, like until the whole pot was full of stuff and everybody got to eat. There was no charismatic leader and everything.
Your only difference in your version of the story is there's no charismatic leader. And I say to you, look around. If you don't see the charismatic leader, you are the charismatic leader. So we all know you as the creator of Stone Soup, the Magic the Gathering format.
I'm also reading this Wikipedia page now as you're talking, and the explanation on Wikipedia is very similar to what I said, but instead of being benevolent, it's like tricksters that travel from town to town and trick people into giving them their food.
People need food.
No,
Yes,
it specifically
that's
says
what-
they're travelers that then like come and pretend to make a rock edible and just basically steal the food of the
You're
villager.
putting your narrative of theft on this person in need who is asking for support.
That's what I thought, Anthony, but that actually is one of the major stories about some little kid that tricks an old woman to feed him through this weird narrative of stones and adding things to pots and stuff like that. I have a little booklet that Joe Donkey gave me, and I was like, what is this trash? And it scared me. I thought it was over. I thought nobody would play this game because they were like, you're trying to trick us, you terrible person. Luckily, the hippies prevailed. We all got to eat. We all got to share stuff. I have a question for you guys. How did you interpret the rules of Stone Soup? I don't want to repeat them. I want you to repeat them because they change every time it's sort of passed along.
And that's good, because we should say what the rules are, because so far we have not at all. We have just talked about the Stone Soup parable and said that we played a Magic format. Here's my interpretation of the rules, and then you tell me how it comports with your own DSB, though it sounds like you're going to be embracing any way I've misinterpreted it. I believe Stone Soup is a format where 8 Magic the Gathering players, ideally, though the numbers are flexible, show up to a draft, each bringing 45 sleeved Magic cards and 5 of each sleeve basic land for a total of 70 cards, the 25 basic lands and the 45 Magic cards. And those 45 cards can be whatever you want. I think I felt like there was a subtle implication of mostly singleton, and that was about it. The idea being that you're going to mix those 45 cards with everyone else's 45 cards, shuffle them up randomly, pay no mind to the different colored sleeves that would allow you to theoretically, try and figure out what's on top of your deck with, changing densities and, probabilities of what color sleeves are in. And you just end up playing a found, unique one of cube that just happened to come together from the minds of all the players that are bringing those cards to the table.
Do you agree with that, Anthony?
That was my understanding as well. I feel like going along with it should probably be singleton. I feel like there's a pretty obvious sort of rule of engagement that you're not going to put something yucky in the soup, and that seems like a pretty easy rule to follow.
I did not think about that at all.
Don't put a button in the Stone Soup or a nail or a bolt. Put some cards that you think would be fun to play with in there. Is that where the confusion is? Is the confusion just about what is the criteria for what cards you're including the confusion?
I put Tanglewire in there. Is that a bad flavor?
No, of course not. You need a little something in there to spice it up. Is that where the confusion lies, or is there something else that you're concerned about or that you've altered between different iterations of doing Stone Soup drafts?
I mean, I'm gonna kind of back up and abstract this a little bit. What would you bring to an actual Stone Soup? If you came over to our place in Idaho and we were gonna put everything in a pot, no matter what you brought, what would you bring?
Does it have to all go in the pot with equal density?
Whatever you bring, it goes in the pot. Whatever you bring goes in the pot. What would you bring?
It is tough. I'm playing mind games with myself immediately where it's okay, I want to just make sure the soup is substantial enough, so let's just bring some potatoes. But everybody's going to bring potatoes. I want to bring something that's a little bit more novel.
Anthony,
so
you don't bring potatoes to Idaho. Get real.
Well, that's the thing. So I want to bring something.
I'm going to come from Maryland to bring my Maryland potatoes. You look like an absolute idiot
some
right
Maryland
now.
crab. So people are like, oh, that's a little interesting. But then if I bring crab and somebody else brings, I don't know, something that doesn't that clashes with the crab, then I'm going to be the asshole. So it's threading this needle of, do I bring something that is fairly neutral and likely to just harmonize with whatever, or do I want to bring something that's a little bit more novel and interesting?
See, my first thought was pickled onions, which I want to put on top of whatever comes out of the pot.
Nope, it's going right in the soup.
But if it goes in the pot, then it's going to be pretty overpowering and going to kind of mess stuff up. But that was my first inclination to make a really good pickled onion. I put it on pretty much everything.
So I'm hearing veggies as a baseline.
And
right?
crabs.
And
don't forget
and Maryland crab meat. Jumbo lump crab meat.
An entire whole crab.
Just a whole crab.
How about a stone crab?
Why
not?
How about 1 8-pound lobster? I read an account on Reddit of a man eating an 8-pound lobster, and him describing having to kill it was really gruesome. It's hard to kill. It's really big and thick.
It's like a tank.
Yeah.
I guess you boil it.
No, because you don't want to do that, because
that's your Phyrexian dreadnought.
That
right there.
makes the meat tight. Apparently, you're supposed to try and kill it quickly with a knife through the head. It's the most humane thing.
If you want to go really crazy, first you submerge it in a tank with a 1% eugenol dissolved in the water. There's a whole process.
Of course, you would know all about this.
What the heck?
We're predictably off track, but do you feel like what we bring to an actual Stone Soup is emblematic of our approach to the Stone Soup draft?
Leeks. I'm bringing leeks. Final answer.
You bring some veggies because you want it to mix in. You're okay, everybody can eat the veggies. Everybody's probably going to bring a little veggies, which is people probably bring a few lands. They're oh, I'll bring some special lands. That's good. And then people are oh, it tastes bland. What do I do? I'm going to bring a little bit of salt. Not too much salt, just a little bit, And so you get your Phyrexian dreadnoughts, you get your tangle wires, but you don't want to overpower it. And then I feel like there's a lot of nice similarities. And then some people just bring the stone, they're just oh, I'm doing lantern control and I'm drafting my own stuff. And that's fine too.
I do want to talk about the dynamics of this draft. First, we should say you're not taking credit for designing this. And obviously, I'm sure this is the thing people have done in some variation as long as drafting has existed, because it's kind of like an obvious, silly thing to do, right?
Hold on. I think we need to talk more about that just a little bit.
Okay, sure. Let's unpack that.
We need to go back to basically the island of Kojima in 1953, where basically you have these primatologists studying macaque monkeys. You guys have heard about this, right? And one monkey learns how to wash yams in the sea and eventually teaches all the other monkeys on the island how to do it. And when there's 100 monkeys on the island, supposedly, the information then gets crossed over to other neighboring islands. This is the whole 100 monkeys theory by Lyle Watson, which was then later popularized as Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic fields, right? So basically, this is absolutely not scientifically plausible at all.
Doesn't sound like it, no. Morphic fields, not a thing.
It's cited, so it sounds like science, but actually...
What I'm saying is the environment was ripe for this. And like the idea is just spontaneously generating out of a bunch of different communities. So like if anybody is responsible for the creation of Stone Soup, it's really you guys.
I think it's Richard Garfield. I think it's
and getting
Richard
us into
Garfield,
this whole
PhD.
situation. It's multiple discovery. If you look it up on Wikipedia, wonderful. It happens all the time. You know, the whole like Leibniz and Newton inventing calculus at the same time. Like all these things happen. So it's just been in the air and now it's ripe and it's happening all over the place. So I don't want to take credit for it. I just want to be a part of the zeitgeist. And it's an honor being here today to talk about it.
It's like how nobody had beaten Tetris for whatever, 50 years Tetris has existed. And then like 4 people beat it in the span of like 2 months all at once.
Yeah, it's kind of like the E. coli long-term evolution experiment where like eventually these 12 independent experimental separated E. coli populations learn how to metabolize citrate. It's kind of like that.
It's exactly like all these things. If you can't attach yourself to one of these metaphors, then I can't help you. This is not the podcast for you.
I think we got like 6 more of these in the can we can find.
I do want to cite some near precedents, though, at least, you know, close to us in our like social network, which is the sort of Madison group, the Mingos, they call themselves. They did a fruitcake draft, which was similar to this, though it definitely had more rules. They were like definitely strictly enforced singleton, and there's like somebody in charge of the cube that also made some like curatorial decisions either after or before the draft, and then it sort of got carried on and became a cube that lived on. But the sort of idea of every player showing up with a pool that then gets mixed in randomly. They called theirs fruitcake because the mix of sleeves of different colors reminded them of a fruitcake. I personally think Stone Soup is a more evocative name given the parable, I guess, that we're referencing here. I think you get some credit, Dan, for thinking about this in an intentional way. I think a lot of people maybe tried this. I don't think a lot of people have thought about it as much as you have thought about it, and I want to unpack the dynamics and ways you can go about this draft because I honestly had a really good time and thought it was more interesting and fun than I expected. I thought maybe it would be kind of a novelty and some of the decks would be stupid and broken. And actually, I thought it was very fascinating to sort of get to draft an environment that you don't know anything about, which is so rare, right? Like, let's just start there. I think one of the most exciting things was that you have absolutely no idea what is coming in future packs. And I guess theoretically, you could try and find a cube draft where you don't know the cube designer, you've never seen the cube list before, and just sit down totally blind and draft it.
You can definitely do that. I've done that many times.
Well, I think most people don't have that luxury, to be honest.
That's fair, yeah.
I think we have traveled to a bunch of cube events, and we have this sort of luxury. But even then, I feel like you can oftentimes extrapolate from a pack a lot of what that designer might have thought. Here, you can't extrapolate anything because you are looking at the fractured, 8 different plans, 8 different sort of ideas for how to approach this. Somebody could have brought only black cards. Somebody could have brought only land. Somebody could have brought a bunch of intricate combos that are like 2 and 3 card combos that work with each other and maybe other things other people brought. You have no idea what's coming in future packs, and I will say that alone as sort of a baseline delight was, I think, a great benefit of this format that I really loved.
How do you think it differs from Chaos Draft?
I mean, what's in the packs in Chaos Draft, I guess is what it comes down to. Well, I didn't feel like Chaos Draft. I guess here's how it differed. I think in Chaos Draft, there's actually not that much range between the average commons and uncommons in the vast majority of Magic sets. They're not going to be that crazy because they're all commons and uncommons. And so you're going to have maybe some like weird rares in there that might spice things up. But I think overall the density of insanity in this format where people are like intentionally, doing something weird or freaky was a lot more dense and just more dense weirdness and quirkiness than you get in an actual Chaos draft.
I think we're about to cycle back around to our conversation about entropy, which is exactly where we want to be. But I think there is something weird about, in some ways, this feels more novel than if you had literally just said, we're going to just like use a random number generator to generate totally random cards from all of Magic. Like, not a Chaos draft in the sense of you have sealed booster packs that exist in what they were, but it's just pure random. Like, at that point, there's so much noise in the system, it almost just like bleeds into this new kind of uniformity.
Well, yeah,
and
that just becomes a draft of the average of all of Magic, right?
Yeah.
Which is not that interesting.
Here, people are able to put their thumb on the scale in like a not insubstantial way, like contributing 45 cards to a draft. That is potentially a whole drafter's pool. And people definitely leaned their pools in different ways. Like, I know I didn't see everybody's pools that they contributed, but clearly somebody had it seeded in this sort of cartouche and trial package. There was, I think maybe it was you trying to do this whole Phyrexian Dreadnought thing, like seed in these combos. So there's these like bigger or these like weirdly sized themes that kind of imply there's a little bit of something there, but the way that those connect is even maybe more interesting sometimes.
So I'm hearing that you liked the kind of echo of intentionality that you felt when you can see like all the red sleeves are like, these weird like anime cards with, that have been crossed out and redacted. And then like the blue sleeves, are like somebody only brought lands or somebody only brought, whatever, black cards. I think the intentionality is felt, but like, do you think that's important? Obviously, Andy, you said you have the story that you went and you thought about the pile and the pool you were going to make, and then at the last minute you like lost it.
Yeah.
And then you just grabbed a whole bunch of other cards. Like, that still was like fun, but like, I don't know, what were you thinking when you're thinking about creating this pool? Like, is the pool a representation of you or what you want to see in the world, or like a thing that you wish you saw in Magic, or cards that just didn't have a home somewhere and you're like, maybe they'll work in this weird place, that is unknown? Like, what are your thoughts when you're building a pool?
I had an interesting experience in that I spent a couple weeks spending a little bit of time here and there just picking through boxes of cards and binders to try and figure out what I wanted my Stone Soup contribution to be. And I had a vision for it that was, somewhat fuzzy, but a vision nonetheless. And then, like you said, Dan, I just misplaced the pile the night before I was supposed to pack for the event, and therefore had to cobble together a whole other pile, which I also kind of limited my scope for my entire collection, so I didn't have to pour over boxes again. I was like, basically just the cards that are in this binder, which are my like cool old foils that I don't ever plan to buy list. I just like them as like collector's objects, basically. And also the remnants of my Degenerate Microcube were the two things I ended up pulling from. But let's start with where I wanted to begin, because some of the cards I had included in my initial collection definitely fall into the category of cards that I just wanted to have a home in a drafted environment that I had not yet found in any of my own cubes. Either things that I thought were just cool, like Rude Awakening was one of the cards I first pulled out of my box and was like, I want to put this in there for sure. This is a 5-mana sorcery that says, choose one, untap all lands you control, or until end of turn, lands you control become 2/2 creatures that are still lands, and has Entwine for 2 and a green. So for a total of 8 mana, you get to make all your lands 2/2s and untap all your lands, and therefore get to attack with all of them or just do other stuff. This is a weird card I used to have in my Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck in Commander back when I played that. But that was one of the cards I was like, this is a weird card. I don't know what it's going to do. It kind of like can do something on its own. In a low enough power environment, it can be pretty good to make all your lands into 2/2s in the late game and just hit your opponent with them. But it also has all these other potential weird implications and combos and like weird sort of interactions you could potentially pull off. I also had Toshiro Umezawa in this pile. I had Parallax Wave because I'm a sicko in this pile. Also, just some old cards I really like Mind Slicer was in here, and Seton Crozen Protector was in here. I was also really excited to play Westvale Abbey, one of my like favorite double face cards that was in this pile. So it was really kind of like there wasn't a cohesive vision to what the pile was going to be as much as it was a bunch of individual cards that I'd hoped might find purchase in other people's pools, right? The cards were not really meant to be internally cohesive as much as they were meant to be open-ended nodes for hopefully potential synergies with other people's cards they brought, was what I was initially hoping to do.
Did you get a chance to play against any of your own cards?
Well, the thing is, I didn't get to do this. These are the cards that I lost. And then what I ended up bringing was actually a sort of another way I had conceived of maybe building a stone soup pool that I had decided not to do for this draft, and then ended up having to do last minute because I was, pressed for time, which was mostly, well, I should say half and half. Half of this is still cards I think are cool that I just wanted to include and thought were interesting. Time Stop, for example, is a cool card. I think, cards like Show and Tell and Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker are kind of interesting. Like, what can you possibly combine this with? And there was one card I put in here intentionally for Show and Tell, but mostly I was like, find something to do a Show and Tell. I actually had Flash in here too, and I had nothing that did anything with Flash in my pool. So Flash was like find somebody else's card to do something with it. But I also just seeded the entire Phyrexian Dreadnought package with Stifle and Dress Down and Doorkeeper Thrall and Mycosynth Gardens. Just a bunch of ways basically to get your Phyrexian Dreadnought into play. I also put Fling in here, thinking maybe you could fling your Phyrexian Dreadnought, if not. And honestly, it just comes down to the fact that Phyrexian Dreadnought is like a favorite card of mine that also does have weird other applications. And I had my secret hope was that I would get to draft Phyrexian Dreadnought, maybe have a couple of these ways to like get into play in there so I could just do the thing I really love. But I really wanted to find other cards that would do something with Phyrexian Dreadnought.
You want somebody to show up with that Varol's, the Scar, what is it, Scar Striped?
The one that gives everything scavenge. Yeah, that would be a cool thing for someone to show up with. So that was where I was really hoping to come out of this pool. But to be perfectly honest, it was not my original plan for my pool. So I feel like, I don't know, I want to do it again is the answer. Like I wanted to play this format again so I can bring the kind of pool that I intended to bring in the first place.
Well, now you've given it away. I mean, you were very adamant about secrecy.
We were talking in a group chat, weeks before this draft. I think it would have really ruined it to be like, here's what I'm going to bring, and then people can like intentionally do things based on that. Like, is that something you feel like is within bounds, Dan?
I mean, we are just at the very beginning of this thing.
There are no boundaries.
I mean, really, it's just emerging out of the environment at this time. And I think most people's initial reactions are things like, oh, I'm going to bring 45 of like a single card or something. Or people are just saying like, oh, I'll just bring crazy power. Or they do what you did and they go back and they find those beloved cards from like the binders that they've never seen before. Or some people, like I've gotten just hooked on making an absolute just weird synergy that has to do with all the different enrage enablers, because I think those things play really well against each other in games. Thinking about the environment as like, well, if multiple people get pieces of this, like how do these cards play against each other and still be interesting? So I don't really think anything is like out of bounds. I think people should just try all kinds of weird rules. I love seeing the really bizarre redacted stuff or just trying all kinds of new things. I think there's definitely rules that are like, well, you shouldn't pick your own cards, or you shouldn't...
I did a lot of that. I picked a lot of my own cards in the draft.
I was trying my best not to pay attention to the color of sleeves, like in the draft as well as during the gameplay, because, yeah, that's sort of like a conceit. It's like there's an obvious thing. There's like a problem here that everybody has to be willing to look for the fun and avoid that, except for I was looking around to see who was drafting their own cards to judge them a little bit.
Why is that frowned upon? What is the social implication?
I don't know, just like society, man.
Yeah, where's that come from?
I don't know. I brought cool cards. I like taking them. I think I like, at the end of the draft, in the cards I actually main decked, the cards I brought were tied with one other person that I think had a similar sort of sensibility to me. And then there was a little bit from almost everybody's pool. So it wasn't like at the end of the day I had drafted my entire pool. I think I maybe had 7 cards from the cards I brought, or 8 maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I brought cards I liked. That makes sense to me. I think it's fine to take your own cards. Part of the fun is that you get to eat your own ingredients too. You don't have to just eat what everyone else brings.
Unless you're the person that brought the stone.
Yeah, but
that tricky
guy. But nobody did that because everyone had to bring cards. Well, I guess you mentioned some of the like crazier stuff, DSB. We should mention that Jane. I didn't think this was within the rules, frankly. I would have said this was probably not allowed, but Jane brought cards that were Sharpie redacted, and we were instructed to play them as Sharpied, which for the most part, they were mundane. It was like, a pretty reasonable Sharpie. There were a couple of bright exceptions. Do you want to tell people about the pirate ship you got to play with, Dan?
Yeah, I think, I don't remember it exactly verbatim, but I think it was just Sharpied to just be pirate. And it was, if pirate damages an opponent, you gain control of their library.
And keep it. And keep it was a really important part of the text of that card. And
because that was part of the flavor text, if I remember.
Yes. Yeah. Keep it was part of the flavor text.
Gain control of target player's library and keep it is very, very funny.
Which I read this in the draft and I was like, are we playing this? Like, this just doesn't work. And James was like, it works. You just concede. Like, don't let them take your library. Like, that would be a huge punt. And I'm like, okay, I guess that does kind of work. Just don't make a huge punt. Respect that. I thought that was actually totally fun. Like, that's the kind of thing that I feel like, again, we've talked about Jane's great taste in the show before. I think Jane is the person you can trust with the power of a Sharpie altering, and it's entirely possible somebody else could sour the soup a bit with some ridiculous Sharpie modifications. But in this case, what Jane brought, I think, was just a delight and only made the draft more exciting.
Okay, so we have to talk about the elephant in the room is the lantern control deck, which I think is like the perfect example of cheating the system. I don't even know if it is a cheating the system, but it is basically like a wonderful way of kind of manipulating this environment. So the lantern control, of course, like the pieces of lantern control are kind of worthless on their own. They're not really, like if you see them in a draft, you're not going to pick up like random crappy lanterns. There's like other really cool stuff. But so the lantern control player can just like draft all their own lanterns, make the insane lantern control deck, and then just kind of, school everybody in that terrible way that lantern control wins. And I don't know if there is rules that should try to limit that, or whether we just kind of allow that to happen and then watch the meta sort of evolve. Because I think a lot of the time that we're thinking about Stone Soup, we kind of think about it as this one-off thing. Oh, we did it once. But then, of course, you want to do it again. But like, do you make an entirely new soup additions for the next one? Or do you bring that soup back with like slight additions and modifications to it? So anybody
like
that's
a
done...
Malay.
Yeah, like if you've lost the lantern control once, you're definitely going to hate draft that the next time you see it come around in Stone Soup. And I think there's a whole evolution of this format that I think we are going to hopefully see in playgroups as it goes on. Because like I said, we're just in the very beginning of like what rules are good or bad, or is singleton something that we want to do? Should we enforce people bringing certain amounts of non-basic lands, or does that matter?
I mean, or you mentioned that sort of social pressure, like maybe that really is the answer. And if somebody brings something really nasty, you're not going to create rules to try and stop them. You're just not going to invite that player back, and that's going to create some real social pressure.
Did you have this lantern control experience, Dan, or is this a theoretical lantern control experience?
Did you do this? Did you bring the lantern control?
I did not. No, I did not. We theorized of it, and then I think Brett and his play group actually did it, and somebody did bring lantern control, and they totally won every game.
That is kind of cool, though.
It is kind of cool. They have a much more competitive environment and whatnot, and I think, we're really going to see very different Stone Soups in very different environments. I think, just from playing with you all in Spokane, everybody in Idaho was just like, wow, like those people's teeth are sharp. We are very much more a relaxed group. And so I think it's awesome to see different Stone Soups kind of evolve into more powerful or more silly. That's the beauty of it. And the social agreement of it is, I don't know, it's malleable. It's interesting. I'm really interested to see how you guys, if you do take it to Baltimore and do it, what happens? Who brings what? Like, why do they bring those things? Do they bring crazy combos? Like, I don't know.
Well, in the words of the great D.S.B, I have to say that we're at the beginning of this thing still. And I actually kind of think that this could probably withstand a fair amount of like sweaty, spiky optimizing, if that's what a playgroup is into. So like this theoretical lantern control player, right? Maybe they got away with it once. I'm actually kind of curious to see how, because unless they're breaking singleton for lantern, which is a choice, how are they making sure they actually get the lantern every turn? There's only 2 copies of that effect, I believe, that are printed in singleton. It's the Field of Dreams, the Over-Reserve List card, and Lantern Control itself, or Lantern of Insight itself.
I feel like you could do a lot more, though. You could play with, I guess telepathy doesn't work. It's really about...
It has to be the top of the library.
Yeah.
This deck has been, like, workshopped to within an inch of its life, but did they put a bunch of tutors in? Like, I'd be curious to see what that story actually played out as. And I'm actually curious to see what if 8 players that were like, let's say they were playing Stone Soup Draft for $25,000, and they are just trying to win because they're trying to walk home with $25,000.
8 players bring the perfect lantern control pool and then play lantern control mirrors for 36 hours straight. Well,
it seems to me like one of the obvious things to do is to try to bring some strategy, whether it's lantern control or some other combo that consists of pieces other people won't want that you can then reliably sort of table. But then once everyone knows everyone's doing that, I think it will devolve in a potentially very interesting way. So I don't want to rule out like that this format could potentially stand up to that amount of like sweaty, spiky scrutiny, because I think it might be able to. But I do think the vast majority of people are probably going to play with a more sort of acceptable social contract of like, we're here to have fun. Don't try and just make everyone have a bad time, you know?
But you're also implying something very specific. When I showed up bringing cards to contribute to a fun draft. And then once we drafted and played the games, I was trying to win. I was not trying to win before the draft started. I was not thinking about building my pool in a way to increase my own win percentage, which I think really changes the dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you do that? How do you build your pool specifically to win? I've talked about this with the folks in Idaho, and they're just like, Dan, chill out. Chill out. And I'm like, I don't know. It's fun to think about. You know, I do think you can kind of go down this rabbit hole of like, you know, what happens to the meta when this is the focus is to win? Do you just bring terrible cards and then you don't draft them and then you draft everybody else's cards? So people get like stuck with bad cards. I don't know. It's a fascinating question. I know that a lot of people aren't going to play that way, and I don't know if they should, but I think it would be fun to try to do that just for one stone soup.
I agree.
I think the rest of your play group is right.
You're also screaming, shut up.
Chill out.
Shut up, Dan, from the other room.
Just put some fun cards in there. My biggest question going into it, though, and you mentioned power level a little bit, was knowing nothing about what this group was going to bring. Like, literally, these are mostly people that are not from the same state, and I don't play Magic with them regularly. I was concerned that either if I bring a bunch of cards that I like that are kind of dorky and not very powerful, those cards just would never get played, and that wouldn't feel very fun. On the other hand, if I bring super powerful cards, is everybody just going to be bummed out and be like, why'd you bring all these things that ruin the games? So that was one of the biggest questions I had, was how do I build a pool that could withstand like a huge variety of power level of cards and still be meaningful without necessarily being too salty?
What did you put in?
Oh, just a bunch of dinky, dorky little cards. But that was another part of what I was thinking was...
You put in Paradoxical Outcome.
I did
Vintage
put in
Staple.
Paradoxical Outcome. So I included a bunch of cards that were overall like very low in mana cost. That seemed like a risk, is that many people could look through their collections and see, here's all my favorite 4 and 5 drops. Like, that's one of the risks we see of just new cube designers. So I would not be surprised to see that same thing pan out in a stone soup pool. So I overall just brought things that are fairly flexible, fairly cheap, can do stuff like a Cloudfin Raptor. Sure, it's just a 1-drop, but it actually can be pretty relevant in a lot of, like a blue deck.
Give your Phyrexian Dreadnought flying. No, wait, that's the Evolve one.
It's the Evolve one.
I'm
but you
thinking
can,
of
it works. You can definitely put a counter for sure on your Cloudfin Raptor. Some Disenchant, some Swords to Plowshares I put in there, which is a card that I generally wouldn't play in a lot of contexts, but it's going to make sense anywhere. And the ceiling being a 1-for-1 removal, I feel like that's always going to kind of be fine. I also seeded in a couple equipments, which I thought would be interesting, a little bit of Grave Hate. Yeah, I mean, overall, just like cheap interaction and some cheap, relatively efficient threats that aren't going to take over a game on their own was kind of the way that I approached this. And then, yeah, a couple weird things like Paradoxical Outcome, which is going to scale sort of inversely with the power level of an environment. If you have a bunch of cheap little artifacts, it might be super powerful, but in a retail limited, it's going to be totally unplayable.
Is it totally unplayable retail limited?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. So that was overall kind of my approach, and then plenty of lands as well. Not plenty, 5. That's a chunk.
So I'm hearing that you're thinking about sort of spreading out potentially not only like color balance and mana curve, keeping everything low. You're really being very generous with kind of the health of the environment.
I tried. I mean, I told you I'm going to bring leaks. Everybody loves leaks.
Yeah, everyone does love leaks. Do you think that like 45 cards is, let's say we're playing with 8 players, which I think is a fine assumption, although we did do a Stone Soup 2 weeks ago here in Idaho with 15, which was out of control. You never wheeled a single thing.
That's kind of sick.
It was unbelievable. There were so many different kinds of sleeves, and it totally worked. And it was just wonderful. We had to scoot like multiple 8-foot tables together in a giant like sea just to pass all the packs. It was wonderful. So it does scale all the way up to like massive amount of players. It was pretty fun trying to thread everybody's cards, and also shuffling was a little bit of a nightmare. But
if only you had a great way to shuffle a huge number of cards.
Oh, we did. We had 6 players doing exactly the thing that you like the most.
Soy sauce?
Looking at birds?
Yeah, exactly. But my question is, considering 8 players, is 45 cards enough to kind of hold together a theme? You know, like, is that enough to do a synergy package? Like, how many, we always talk about like, oh, how many cards do I need to put in here to make such and such a thing viable? Is 45 cards enough to make a thing viable?
I think absolutely. And honestly, I think something that I observed in this draft, which was also a source of delight for me, was seeing the cards that multiple people have brought. Like this card showed up in the draft 3 times, but not because one player brought 3 copies, because 3 players each brought a copy of that card because we all agree this card is cool and good.
I thought one of those was particularly funny.
Which was the one that you were talking about?
The Captain's Hook.
Oh, yeah, there was multiple
It
Captain's
makes sense
Hooks.
that there's going to be multiple flings, because fling is, it kind of fits that like all-purpose, but like aspirational kind of card. Captain's Hook, I was just going through all my collection. I'm like, this is always a card that I thought was really close to being like a cool variation on Grafted War Gear. I don't like that it's a Captain's Hook, but then I ended up with both of them in my pool at the end of the draft.
Double hooks. Like, I thought that was actually very cool, and I think if you were taking 45 cards and trying to weave in a package for some sort of synergy, or even 2, I think it's very reasonable to expect that not only are you going to get, some number of cards from your pool, say you commit 15 cards from your 45 to like just supporting your Aristocrats package or your Blink package or your whatever, the chances that nobody else's cards relate to that at all are none. Like, there's definitely going to be cards that are going to relate to your strategy. I mean, I had the whole Stifle Knot package in my pool, which also ended up in my deck because nobody else took any of the pieces. I did the Lantern Control thing, I guess. I'm the bad guy. And that's about as narrow of a synergy as you can possibly imagine. And yet, I ended up with the paradoxical outcome that Anthony brought, and it was so sick in my deck because I also had Dress Down. So multiple times I did like a fair dress down paradoxical outcome thing where I wasn't putting a Dreadnought into play, but I was drawing a bunch of cards and then putting my dress down back in my hand to then play it again and make my opponent's creatures abilityless on a future turn.
Okay, that is pretty cool.
I also had one turn later in the game where I got to play dress down into Dreadnought, into paradoxical outcome, pick up dress down and Dreadnought, and do it all over again and just turn my Dreadnought into a 1-mana dinky like draw a card off the paradoxical outcome, which was also very cool.
You turned Dreadnought into your favorite card.
Yeah, 1-mana draw a card.
Draw a card.
So even if you're doing something super narrow, you are going to have these moments of delightful overlap, I think, with what other people have brought. It's almost impossible not to, just with how much Magic cards relate to one another and how many sort of threads there are woven through all of Magic's history.
How did you feel about the sleeves being different colors? Did it bother you? I mean, Anthony, you specifically said you didn't look at it, but like, what if you did? Like, what if you tried to big brain, like, oh, the next card's got to be the Dreadnought,
I mean, that's definitely exploitable. I think that, again, there's just you have to be playing this with a group of people that are not necessarily going to try and make that what it's all about. That does sound kind of fun if it's like, you're just using it to heighten the tension a little bit. Not that you're choosing to like, oh, I'm not going to crack my fetch because there's a purple sleeve on top. Like, that gets a little not so interesting to me.
I don't know. I think that could be, like, again, that's not for me. I don't want to optimize that, but I think a group of very spiky players could have a lot of fun optimizing that problem of now I actually care what the sleeves are and trying to like remember what's what. Like, some sickos are going to enjoy that.
I mean, it's also worth mentioning, like we mentioned, everybody's also bringing basics in the same sleeve, and that's a pretty important choice as well.
Absolutely.
So that you shuffle all those basics together and then you're picking randomly, so you can't just be like, oh, I don't have any purple sleeves in my deck, so I'll get all purple sleeve basics and then know which if I'm going to draw a basic or not. I think that's pretty important as well.
Yeah. I wasn't bothered by the sleeves in the slightest. I wondered if I would not be able to stop my brain from trying to do some sort of arithmetic to try and figure out how likely the top of my deck was to be my out. And my brain had no problem ignoring that completely. It was just, it's enough complexity. I mean, 8 different sleeve colors is a lot. You're rarely looking for one card, usually looking for a class of card. And so you probably have removal spells in every single color of sleeve. You have lands in every single color of sleeve. I found that it was a non-issue, and I wouldn't worry about it, honestly, if you're listening to this and want to do your own draft and think that might be a hiccup. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think there's definitely a level of complexity where, I don't know, maybe even with 4 players with 4 different color sleeves, I think it would still be too complex to really know or care about or be able to big brain it in any kind of reasonable way. But I mean, that's a challenge for anybody listening. If you want to try to make the Stone Soup big brain, cheat with specific sleeves kind of thing, that would be amazing to see how that turns out.
Yeah, again, I think people could optimize this in ways that we would think were not very fun, but they could potentially have a lot of fun with it. And theoretically, I think this game mode of everyone bringing their own cards does not inherently fall apart to spiky scrutiny. Something else I loved about this format, which was kind of unexpected, and I can't really fully describe it, but I'm curious to hear what you all think about this, is I multiple times lost badly to a card I put in the pool. And I thought that was great because I genuinely, like, more so even than when I'm playing one of my own cubes, I felt like, well, I can't be mad about that. I brought that card. Like, I can't be salty about losing to this card. Like, I literally put it in this stone soup, and they drafted a deck and somehow made it work. That experience made me so much more fundamentally open to the idea of like really swingy things happening and, you know, potential non-games of Magic. And I just was like, I was like a Zen, you know, at Zen peace, just like happy with whatever happened because we had all contributed this sort of weird pile of cards. It like set the expectations such that like I felt we were all on like the most even playing field before like the draft began as possible. Like nobody could know the cube better than somebody else or understand specific combos better than somebody else. And then the way the games played out, it was like, yeah, I put that card in here, so I got killed by it. Fair play, you know? And the fact that everybody at the table could have that experience instead of just the cube designer being like, well, I can't get mad because I put all these cards in my cube. I thought sort of that laundering of responsibility for the potential play patterns of the environment was a big net benefit. It was like a firing squad, but for cube, where you're like, who knows who pulled the trigger? But we all had guns in our hand.
Slayer.
We all had guns in our hand, though, so I guess you know, we're all to blame.
That was a roller coaster, Andy.
Yeah, I felt like I was really rambling there.
And then we ended with a firing squad. I completely agree with you.
Can you say that in a more cogent and a concise way, by any chance, to save me?
I think no. It was wonderful.
I agree with you completely. Couldn't repeat a word of it.
I mean, when you put together the cards for Stone Soup, you are basically putting together like a weird version of yourself that you're kind of offering the community, and you know that you're going to have to play against yourself. It's kind of a wonderful like reflection, and when you get a card that you put in there, like starting to kick your ass, you're just like, yes, like I am worth something. Even if this physical form loses today, like that card goes on.
I may be a bad Magic player, but I own a Baneslayer Angel. I am worth something.
I chose that. Yeah, exactly. You have this incredible sense of worth when you see your cards out there in the world doing great things. It's kind of, you know, I don't know, like giving the keys to your child and they go win a race. I don't know. This isn't any better than the firing squad.
Now who's rambling? You're giving the car keys to your child and they're racing. Look, I think this is part of what I love about this is I think it is actually one of the best ways to demystify cube design. We've said on the show before that one of the biggest barriers to people getting into cube is thinking it's hard to make a cube. They'll make a bad cube. And we're like, look, just like take cards you like in, you know, roughly equal densities of color if you care about that. Put them in sleeves and start playing and just go from there. And I think the fact that you can have 45 people without any coordination, 8 people without any coordination, each bring 45 cards together and end up with an environment that I think is almost guaranteed to be interesting and fun in a number of different ways, predictable and unpredictable. That's what I love about this, right? I think what you're saying, D.S.B, is that everybody gets a little bit of the taste of the joy of cube design, even though they didn't design a cube. They just kind of picked 45 cards they liked. But then when they see their kid out there driving their car around that racetrack, they're like, I did it. I did cube design. I did game design. I contributed a piece to this puzzle that is now this beautiful machine. And I think the fact that this helps demystify that and like offers this very easy, small task. Just do this. Just bring 45 cards you like to this draft. And then I think a lot of people are going to walk away from that infected with the cube design bug, which is, of course, my number one goal, to spread that virus from C to signing C.
I really hope so. It could be an amazing bridge from Commander into Cube. Commander players really, really honing in on that 99 or 100 or whatever many cards they have. And then, sorry. But you think about that a lot, apparently. But this
I'm pretty sure it's up to 108 cards in total at this point.
Oh, you guys are killing me. But this is this way to put your intention and personality into a little pile, and then play those cards. Some of those cards, see those cards out there, and then you get that infected, amazing moment of like, oh, I did game design exactly. But I mean, okay, there's another part of this though, that the demystifying. Maybe it's actually telling us that like everything we're doing is an illusion, you know? Maybe there is really no design. We're not really designers. We've always just been throwing random stuff together and we're just imagining all this strategy and connection and all this stuff. And like this is really kind of putting it out there that it's always been an illusion.
Right. It's like the fact that I can't fail means there was never any real success anyway.
Exactly.
Well, I wish we were 10 minutes longer so I could end the episode right there very abruptly.
Just push that back. Add the stuff before. I don't know. I agree with you, and I totally also want to spread that joy of Cube and demystify it. And I think we've also talked in the past about how just cracking open a booster pack, a booster box, and using that as a starting point for a cube and then evolving it is a great way to start a cube. And I think that this is probably even a more fun way that you can also then engage with other players. So I think this would be a cool way. When we were doing this, everybody, another thing about them being in sleeves is you knew who to give the cards back to. But you could just do it unsleeved and then start this as a cube. I do want to be a little bit cynical, though, or I'm compelled to be a little bit cynical, that I feel like Commander players in particular, I could see both being set up to bring a pile of cards they have really specific expectations for, and not being as willing to be like, okay, cool, it was delightful to see this one card I brought that had some specific expectations, but do something totally different with a different context. And also, I don't really know what Commander looks like these days, but that's where I was really concerned about, is this cube going to be all 5-drops? It's just oh yeah, here's these huge splashy things, and I want to make sure there's a lot of cheap interaction and stuff to get the games rolling.
I just love that you were I'm going to be cynical for a second.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about this ridiculous format. It was about Commander players.
Yeah, no, this format's great. I think we all know where my cynicism starts from.
Format good. Commander players, a high likelihood
high-risk
of
population.
High-risk population. Some people love playing with a bunch of 5-drops, Anthony. And I think... Here's the thing.
Well, let me say that a little bit of a different way, because I don't want to sound like I'm being critical of Commander players. I just think that the skills to build a Commander deck that's going to be fun and you're going to enjoy, I think, are pretty different from building a Stone Soup pool that's going to lead to a fun cube.
I actually completely disagree. I think that if Commander players sat down and just adapted the Game Knights, template EDH deck that says run this many ramp cards and this many board wipes and this many target removals and this many whatever, and they just... made that their 45-card Stone Soup pool, and everyone at the table did that, I think they would have a fantastic time that would exactly meet their expectations. Now, would you love it? I'm not sure.
Are we playing
probably not
1v1 and the cube is 15% wraths?
How many? I don't think they say put that many board wipes in, right?
It's been a long time since I've listened to a Game Nights.
To be honest, I think that the beauty of this kind of format is that you get what you give. And yes, you and I have done so much cube design.
That's literally not the moral of Stone Soup.
That is the moral of Stone Soup. Everyone puts in a little bit, and you all get it back, and it's recontextualized in a way.
The one sneaky guy who started.
Except for the sneaky traveler. The sneaky traveler is the problem. My point is that I think the beauty of this format is that you give what you get, so whatever you put in is what you get back out, and are you going to end up thinking it's a perfect, beautiful cube and you're never going to make any changes to it? Probably not. But the whole point is that all we need to do is get people over that hump of something they can then modify. And we've tried every way, right? Open a booster box or, start with, what was that sealed product Magic Wizards made?
Foundations.
Foundations. Start with the Foundations, whatever set. Or here's how to build a cube from your collection. We've tried every single way to get people in. They work to some degree, but I think this is a even more compelling and a more social way too, because here's the other problem with getting people interested in cube, finding other players. If you get people invested in the cube that you're going to be playing, and so instead of you sitting in your basement in your little dark corner, fettering your way on your little project for a long time, and then wanting everyone to be as excited about it as you are, which is a recipe for disappointment, you make it a social experience. We're going to start a cube in our play group. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do this draft first, and then somebody's going to be the person that's responsible for taking care of this thing, or maybe putting it in sleeves or whatever. And it's a social experience to have this sort of starting point. And then you just go from there. The game design just kind of flows from there so naturally.
That's a great point. And I think that that's a good thing to counter my little hint of skepticism. The stakes could not be lower. Asking people, grab 45 of your favorite cards. Doesn't matter if you win or lose. We're just here to have fun. Really, there are no stakes. And it's just going to... You'll figure out what you enjoyed or didn't enjoy and do it better next time.
Can I tell you guys my favorite part of Stone Soup?
Yes.
It really is shuffling them together in the beginning.
That was cool. One of the 2 pictures I took over the weekend was of that.
Yeah. There is a spiritual feeling when you take everybody's sleeves and the first time you just crunch pink sleeves into some absolutely ridiculous anime sleeve and it starts to mix and your mind is is it going to be random? And you watch chaos unfold in this incredible combination of everybody's passions and things they enjoy. I mean, it's just wonderful to see things be shuffled together. It's that first moment when the cards begin to overlap and you see this bizarre rainbow appear in front of you.
When you literally visualize the broadcast shuffle, which has never been visualized before.
And you can see randomness happen, and you can watch like your brain kind of lose it, where you're like, oh, I can kind of tell that those two they're shuffled together this way. And then you add another one and you're like, oh, I've lost it. It's out there. And it goes out to all the different players. It's absolutely beautiful. Just seeing a deck of sleeves, of a ton of different random sleeves, is just worth doing this once with your friends, just once.
I think my favorite part is the thing I mentioned at the beginning, which is just getting to sit down at a like completely unknown draft. I should say, 1/8 of it, so a not completely unknown draft. A draft that is 7/8 completely unknown to you, and through the process of seeing the packs go by, start to sort of suss out whatever vision each of the individual designers had, and maybe even start to predict, like, okay, well, I brought this set of cards, but now I saw these other cards that were in the draft that make me then assume maybe this third set of cards is actually going to be here, because if I were making a Stone Soup pile that had cards B in it, I would put card C in it as well too. That sort of experience, like, I'm the kind of person that I never watch movie trailers, ever. I don't watch that many movies, but if I'm going to watch a movie, I don't want to know anything about it, right? Like, Friendship is the most recent movie I saw in the theaters, and I heard that Tim Robinson was in a movie, and I was like, just stop talking. I don't want to hear anything else. Don't tell me anything about it. Don't show me the trailer. I just want to go in completely unprepared and like having no preconceived notions, because that is sort of, I think it's honestly a byproduct of the fact that I'm such an overthinker that if I like see a trailer, all I can think about is like, well, they constructed the trailer to try and make it as appealing as possible. They put, shots from all the like climactic scenes in here because those are the most dramatic shots. And
if they already put all the best parts in the trailer, why bother go seeing the movie?
It's literally not that, but it's like I cannot stop my brain from being like, oh, well, like this part of the movie probably happens here, and like trying to like pre-construct the plot. Like, I'm just such an overthinker. I feel like I genuinely can't appreciate art in like its raw form if I have any foreknowledge of it. And this was one of the only ways. Like, the other way is like, I very early on in my like love of Magic used to go to pre-release having not looked at any of the card file and just being like, I'm here to play a set I know nothing about, right? That sort of experience is so rare in Magic, and it's definitely my favorite part about this for sure, was like getting to going completely raw.
I think my favorite part is just some of the specific moments that were really exciting, like being able to side in Blastoderm that has Shroud against my opponent that had this crazy deck that was just all removal and just like took me apart game one, and then having this like Silver Bullet in a way that you wouldn't think about necessarily or have expected or looked for. And another moment where I played this Harmonious Archon and realized, oh no, my opponent has the unblockable Changeling. Shoot, this is symmetrical. It's going to turn all of your creatures into 3/3s as well, and it's unblockable. I'm going to die.
It's actually crazy that's symmetrical.
It's symmetrical, except it's actually worded as non-Archon creatures, so it doesn't affect itself. And I realized just after playing it, like,
is also an Archon?
We're fine because the Changeling is an Archon. And like all those weird little story moments of these card interactions you would just never have seen otherwise, unless somebody deliberately made a cube about this. That to me was really the most fun part.
Should we express any skepticism about the format if we're going to encourage people to go do it? You expressed some skepticism around Commander players, which I think Dan and I both will second and third. Is there anything people should be conscious of if they want to do this in their own play groups that they should try and avoid?
I think you kind of have to go in knowing that it's going to be sort of silly. This is not somebody's hypertuned peasant cube.
Thank God.
It's a very different it's a very different vibe, and like the most fun you're going to get out of it is really those story moments, like these social moments. And I think I would never do like prizing for a Stone Soup unless that was like the very intentional goal. So I would say just in the beginning, because again, we're just right at the beginning of this thing, just like keep it super loose. Play it once and then make up rules after you play it like as loose as possible. And make up rules that your play group, agrees upon, like singleton, or like you have to have so many lands or certain kind of color balance. But in the beginning, just keep it super loose and let it evolve. That's all I would say about the meta right now.
Yeah, I think if there's anything to be conscious of, it's just to remember and maybe encourage the players you're trying to get to do this with you, that they're shaping a whole 1/8 of the draft pool, right? If you want Fixing Lands in there, put Fixing Lands in there. If you want a low curve, play a low curve, right? Like, don't purely just give yourself over to the siren song of your favorite cards. And I kind of agree with you, Dan, in that like I would not even say it has to be singleton. Like if you want to put in 5 copies of Squadron Hawk, like great, do it. That sounds cool. But I do think that just kind of making people aware that like you are going to get what you give. And so if you put in just a bunch of 5 drops, like that's what we're going to be dealing with here. And I think the cards that have the most potential to lead to less fun games of Magic or less interesting games of Magic are the completely self-contained threats that have a high absolute power level. So they're probably higher up on the curve. They cost more mana, but the absolute power is just really high. Things like actual Baneslayer Angel or like, you know, the Titan Cycle from M14 or M12, whatever that was.
Are you just looking at my deck?
I mean, you had a couple of these cards in there. And I do think it's like, you know, I think it's cool when you have to combine the cards from the different draft pools to like do something. And when all you have to do is draw and cast your like huge 5-drop and your opponent doesn't happen to have removal for it, that can be a bummer. So if I was going to discourage anything and like offer any sort of apprehension about like what you should or shouldn't do when you're bringing this pool of cards, I would say just like be aware of self-contained high absolute power level cards. But my actual advice is just to do it. And even if you put a bunch of Baneslayers in there, like see what happens.
No 8-pound lobsters.
Yeah, I guess an 8-pound lobster is the Baneslayer of the stone soup in real life.
I think you really just got to think about if you're going to actually bring food to a big pot and throw it in there, what are the food equivalent of those cards or the other way around, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a much better way to put it. Like, be here in good faith. Like, don't troll this thing. Like, you're going to have to eat the soup too. And don't have your joy from the draft come from being that you robbed everyone else of joy, right? Like, embrace this thing in good faith and, like, you know, actually try and make something that you want to play, you know? Is that it? Is that stone soup?
I don't know. I think that's it. It's amazing. Everybody should try it. It's my favorite way to play. Also, last thing, it doesn't need to be 8 players, Andy. You're really harping on that. I think you can do it with 6. You can do it with 15.
You can do it with any number. It
It really expands very nicely.
Yeah, I think you can do it with any number. 8 is like the assumed default, and so I think it's what we kept saying over and over again. But yeah, there's lots of great fewer than 8-player draft formats listed on our website. I'll link them in the show notes. And yeah, you can cube with any number of players, and this is cube adjacent, certainly. So you can do this with any number of players you want.
We did it with 15. It was unbelievable.
I think doing it with 2 could be interesting, Anthony. I think that's potentially like hate drafting is now very real. Like I think you're actually way less likely to get any 2-card combos in that format than you would at an 8-player table because I know I have to play against you, and if I see, you know, Pestermite or Kijiki or whatever, and I have an opportunity to hate draft it, I'm just going to, because then you don't have that combo in your deck anymore. So
just going to bring like 3 Pestermites, and then you're going to hate draft them all, and then
no
joke's on you.
I just like tempo.
I mean, a 2-player version of this, I think it's very possible to take your Stone Soup pile and potentially mix it into sort of a battle box-esque like scenario for 2-player playing. And like that's where I kind of want to bring in the commander players to be like, oh, this could be a thing where you just play with 3 players or play with 1 other player and you just mix your pools together and then you get to do the thing. And it could work. I don't know. It could take more rules. We're just in the beginning of this thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the many things I love about you is how sort of open-minded you are to what Magic can be and the sort of games we can play with these game pieces. And I think this is a great example of how that sort of free thinking can oftentimes lead you to like great, awesome, interesting types of ways to play. And this is an example of like, you know, we've been hamming it up on this episode a lot. I want to emphasize that I truly think this is a great way to play Magic. And if you are out there and are trying to get your group of players that play other formats interested in something drafted or cube-like, I think this is a great way to do it. It's also a great way to like get your foot in the door of cube design if you really want a cube, but feel like it's too intimidating to design one. Like, this is a great way to sort of make that happen. And even if you're super experienced, you've already got a cube play group that plays every week, this is still really fun to do because it's completely novel.
You guys, thank you so much. This has been an absolute honor and a pleasure. It really has.
Thank you. We couldn't have done it without you.
Always good talking to you, and I always just appreciate your very broad perspective on all things and how you managed to tie Magic to so many other subjects.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lucky Paper Radio. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon, where we have met our goal to pay our editor and now are using this money to put it back into the Cube community. So check it out in the show notes if you want to help be a part of that. All the music for this show is produced by DJ James Nasty, and the show is edited by Matthew. All the Magic cards are produced by Wizards of the Coast, and this podcast is produced by thinking really hard about Magic cards and speaking to microphones about it. Anthony and D.S.B, thank you for the gift of friendship and for the gift of Cube.
Thank you. Absolutely. Can we talk about the Dispossessed now?
Please, that's all I want. Okay, so my question for you, two things about the Dispossessed. One, I just thought it was so relevant to this idea of like the social pressure in a stone soup that like everybody in the stone soup is being totally individualistic, and yet there is this like intense communal social pressure that is kind of necessary for that total individualism to work.
Right. I didn't want to like give it away, but like the fact that you had the Dispossessed and we were going to play Stone Soup, it has like this amazing symbolism of the anarchy that is written about in that book. It's wonderful. It's like, how far are you finished with it?
I'm finished. So that was my other question is maybe we shouldn't put this on the podcast. Maybe you should air horn this out. But there was some specific moment you thought was like a turn in the book that you were excited for me to reach?
No, there's a very specific line in there where he says, the main character talks about that the light of different suns, so different planets have different lights, because their suns are different, but darkness is all the same.
Oh, yeah. That was...
Oh, my God. Crushed me. Okay, sorry. I don't know if there's a particular turn, but it's when you really kind of realize how anarchy works on that planet and like what is successful about it and what's at fault. And the fact that like they're always having these chaotic meetings where you like go to these fucking meetings and you just like scream at people and like nothing almost ever happens. And I thought that was such a wonderful kind of critique of anarchism, but also the fact that like everybody is kind of free to do whatever. And the way she tied personal possession as this social kind of negativity, I don't know. It was just so amazing. And I know that I read a little bit at the beginning in the little simulacra of a lawn outside the B&B, but
it was sort of an uncanny valley lawn. It was not normal.
I mean, it was a very perfect lawn. It was exactly the American backyard. You could put so many vegetables back there.
But there's like the fact that we're reading the beginning, and the beginning is all about the wall that separates the spaceport to the rest of the planet. And we're reading it in this like weird backyard that's like
perfectly fenced off,
with this, like,
no features.
Final fence. And like the fact that like the wall is just like this purely symbolic thing. And like when I remember reading the beginning and being like, why are people just kind of like randomly showing up? And like, it's not an organized mob. And I was like very confused. And only until like I got through the book did I kind of realize like what the beginning is saying.
There was no law keeping people across the wall.
It's just incredible. Anyways, I could go on and on. I kind of want to read it again right now.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable book. Tell me more about some of the things that you were thinking when you read it.
I don't know if this is in the podcast, but I think this all qualifies as a ringing endorsement for The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Everything that's in the show is in the show.
Great. I don't know. I think that I'm tired.
I think that I'm tired.
That's fair. That's fair. It is late. It is late for you guys. It's like midnight for you guys. So I gotta let you go.
It's 10:15. We're fine.